Welcome Primary 4 students. I'm Mrs. Dua Abbasi. I'm so excited to start together Concept 2 of Unit 1. It's called Senses at Work. Can you guess where you last heard this word? Senses? Yes, the Discover book. We learned before that our body's senses help us gather information from the world around us. These senses are sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. Let's agree as usual on some rules to follow in each lesson. Always bring your science book, prepare a pencil and a notebook. Model me in how scientists think and behave. Ready? Let's start. Over the past concept, we learned about adaptation and that living organisms need to adapt to the conditions of their environment to survive. اتكلمنا الفترة اللي فاتت على البقاء وازاي الانيمالز والبلانتس والهيومنز كمان قدروا يعملوا some changes to adapt to their environments. I wonder what help organisms senses and detect those environmental conditions that we call stimuli, such as sensing the hot and cold weather, light or darkness, or water and food scarcity. Can you guess? Exactly, senses. Senses, الحواس. Animal senses are responsible for gathering information from the surroundings to help their bodies adapt and survive. الحواس الخمسة مهمة جدا في إن الانيمالز أو كل living organisms يقدروا يجمعوا المعلومات اللي حواليهم. Our main goal throughout the concept is to think and find a scientific answer to the essential question. How do animals sense and process information? إزاي الحيوانات بتحس وبتقدر إنها تترجم المعلومات. This will help us know more about how senses work and enable organisms to receive environmental stimuli. Can you guess what this animal is? It is the Egyptian mongoose. Let's observe what it looks like. It's a small animal with rounded, pointed ears, and this is because it mainly depends on the sense of hearing to communicate with other mongooses. The Egyptian mongoose sends units of sounds known to its group members to communicate messages about their movement and searching for food. Open your books on Activity 1, page 39, and read. Can you explain question? How do animals sense and process information? While answering, you may use all what you already know about adaptation and senses. You may also think about how other mongooses of the same group receive information and how the bodies of other animals in general send, receive, and respond to information from their surroundings. Let's record our thoughts. I'm sure you have got fantastic ideas. I'm sure you have got fantastic ideas. Let me guess. Maybe some of you wrote that the Egyptian mongoose sends sound messages to other group members, since it depends mainly on the sense of hearing, while other animals in general use their ears to hear and their eyes to see. Maybe some others thought about our own different senses and how important they are. Senses help us adapt and gather information about the world around us. We sense the heat with our skin and the sense of the food taste with our tongue. As we discover and learn more about our new investigative phenomena in Activity 2, ask questions like a scientist. I bet you have lots of questions in mind. That's great. Keep them coming, exactly like scientists do. My class and I wondered, do you think all animals use their senses in the exact same way? Do they hear, see, smell, and taste similarly or differently? One of my students believed that some animals might have a better sense of hearing than others do. The Egyptian moon goose, for example, while another student thought of sight and how it sharpens may differ from one animal to another, according to the environment it lives in. Imagine what I remembered when I thought of those differences. Superheroes. I remembered the superheroes that I used to watch in the cartoon movies when I was young. They used to have super abilities that no one else ever had, like flying, for example. Think about it. This is so similar to animals. Some animal species have very strong senses compared to other animals, senses that help them survive, and we call them super senses, like this one. Does anybody know what this beautiful creature is? Amazing! That's the dolphin. The dolphin is one of the creatures that have a super sense. Its super sense is stronger than the same sense of other creatures. Surprisingly, this is our investigative phenomena that we will explore: dolphin super senses. Let's watch a video to know what the sense is and why it needs to be so strong. أهم حاجة وانتوا بتتفرجوا على الفيديو عايزاكم تلاحظوا كويس جدا ازاي الدولفين بيقدر ان هو يتواصل ويستخدم السوبر باورز اللي عنده، القدرات الفائقة اللي بتخليه يتواصل مع مجموعة الانيمالز. أهم حاجة don't forget to write down all your observation notes and questions while you watch the video.
As you watch the following segment, think about how dolphins and bats use echolocation to navigate their worlds. Light travels very poorly in water. Its energy decreases rapidly when it is absorbed by water. Sound, on the other hand, travels extremely well in water. Dolphins communicate with one another by transmitting and receiving different sounds: squeaks, grunts, moans. But one sound in particular, the click, is the sound dolphins make when they are using their sonar. The use of sonar by animals to navigate through their environment, locate food, or avoid obstacles is called echolocation. Their sonar helps dolphins see, but they don't use it all the time. When they're simply swimming in open water, dolphins don't need to echolocate. They listen for sound cues to get their bearings.
They hear waves breaking on a seashore. They will hear the noise of shipping in a harbor. You'll hear the clinking chains of a mooring, for example. So they will travel quite happily in total darkness and swim quite fast without echolocating to avoid bumping into things.
Dave Goodson is a sonar engineer who studies dolphins. He says the sonar signal takes a lot of muscular energy to produce. Dolphins use it to navigate difficult spaces and primarily to find food.
When they use the active sonar, it's because they need to. They have to identify a swimming prey, lock onto it, guide their mouth to the actual fish. It's equivalent to us reaching out across the dinner table to pick up a piece of food, but it takes quite a lot of energy.
Here's how dolphin sonar works. A dolphin makes a series of clicks by moving air through the nasal sacs located near its blowhole, a nostril on top of its head. The vibrations from the clicks travel to an area in the dolphin's forehead called the melon, which is filled with fat. The melon acts as a kind of acoustical lens to focus the sound waves into a narrow beam. The dolphin sends out the sound waves in short pulses. Just as in sonar that submarines use, the sound waves bounce off objects. The dolphin receives the echoes in its lower jaw, which is connected by nerves to its brain. The dolphin's brain receives the nerve impulses from the jaw and interprets the echoes, just as our brains interpret light received through our eyes. The time it takes for an echo to leave the dolphin and bounce back tells the dolphin how far away the target is. Other qualities of the reflected sound, such as amplitude and frequency, let the dolphin know the object's size, shape, surface texture, and the speed at which it's moving. All of this happens in a fraction of a second.
Just to put it into perspective, a bottlenose dolphin can see something the size of an orange about 80 meters ahead of him. And that is approximately equivalent to the echo it would get from quite a large fish, but one that it could still swallow whole.
Dave Goodson continues to study dolphins in the hope that he can better understand how dolphins manage such precision in their use of echolocation.
Were you able to identify the dolphin's super sense? Impressive! It is the super hearing sense. But wait, can you guess why particularly the sense of hearing? That's cool, because as we studied in the previous concept, living organisms adapt to the environment they live in. And since dolphins live in dark, unclear water and swim deep down in the ocean, it's difficult to depend on sight because the light doesn't reach this depth easily. الدولفين بيعيش في أعماق البحار وهناك ما بيبقاش فيه أي ضوء وكمان المية ما بتبقاش صافية فما يقدرش يعتمد على السنس of sight بيحتاج إن هو يستخدم other sense which is hearing. So, how about the sound? Unlike the light, the sound moves better through water. That's why dolphins rely on the sense of echolocation. Echolocation is a sense to communicate with other dolphins instead of relying on their sense of sight. The curious question now is, how does a dolphin use echo? And how does it relate to its unique super sense of hearing? تعالوا نشوف ده مع بعض. أكيد لاحظتوا في الفيديو الدولفين سوبر باور which is the echolocation. تعالوا نشرح بشكل أوضح الecholocation. This is the object where the sound is going to hit. The dolphin produces a sound, and when the sound hits the solid object, it returns back. At the beginning, dolphins send sound signals, which are the clicks that we have heard in the video. When these clicks move through the water and hit the object, they bounce back to the dolphins in the form of an echo. Echolocation باختصار معناها ان احنا بنستخدم تحديد المواقع عن طريق الصدى. عن طريق صدى الصوت تحديدا. They use their super hearing senses to receive this echo that help them locate their prey or their swimming direction. Aha! Now I know why dolphins use a unique super sense of hearing. Let's know more about that. Open your books on page 40. Read the passage about dolphins' extraordinary super senses. Then get ready to wonder. Write down on page 41 3 questions that you thought of and were curious to know more about while watching the video and reading the text. Your questions should start with words such as why, how, or when. Your question will always help you learn more about the dolphins' super senses and other animal senses too. And by the end of the concept, we will revisit them to provide scientific answers. Let's start reading. I wonder what curious question you wrote down about dolphins' super senses. Maybe, are there any other animals that use echolocation like dolphins? Or maybe, are the organism's sense organs the only organs responsible for perceiving the surroundings? How about us? How do we use our senses? Let's explore this in Activity 3, Observe like a Scientist. In Observe like a Scientist, we are going to learn how we are using our 5 senses. We will think about the different ways our senses help us gather information and discover the world around us. For example, at school, have you ever thought about how our 5 senses help us every day there and everywhere else too? I'm wondering if we use some senses more than others. And the animals, do we use our senses the same way animals do? Oh my God, you must be so curious like me. We have a lot of questions in mind. Open page 42, observe the image carefully. Which senses help the child in this particular situation? What is the importance of each sense? Think about a daily situation in which you used one of your senses and how it was really important to you at that time. Share that situation with one of your friends or family members. Amazing discoveries. It's time to evaluate like a scientist in Activity 4. Evaluate like a scientist in Activity 4 called What Do You Already Know About Senses at Work? We will evaluate what we learned so far about how animal senses help them survive. Without our evaluation skills, we will not be able to determine what we have learned and what we need to know more about. That's why it's so important. I want you to open page 43 and be ready. زي ما احنا عارفين مهم جدا ان انتوا تلاحظوا استخدام كل الحواس اللي عندنا وازاي كل سنس هتساعدك انك تقدر تتخطى some of the situations. As you can see, a list of different body senses and a table. The first column is a list of purposes that our senses help us with. The first purpose, for example, is avoid danger. What sense help you avoid danger? What do you think? Write your answers in the second column. I think I write the sense of sight, maybe hearing and smell. In the third column, write an example about it. For example, when someone smells something burning, to avoid danger, he acts quickly and puts the fire off. Now, I'm sure you are ready to answer the rest. Finding the delicious food. I believe the senses that help us find food are smell, sight, and touch. Using senses to find food is an important feature that animals have, and although they have the same senses as ours, they use them differently. For example, some animals use smell to identify people. How about recognizing friends? This needs the sense of sight, smell, and hearing. Identifying objects. In identifying objects, we need the sense of sight, smell, touch, hear, and taste. Oops, all of them. The last thing to do now is to close our eyes. Imagine yourself holding an ice cube with your fingertips. How would you feel? Ouch! My fingertips are so cold. I wonder which part of your body that's responsible for processing the information that our fingertips transmit when they touch the ice cube and also make us realize that it's cold. It's only our skin that make us feel cold. Or is there any other organ that's responsible for processing the sensory information? يا ترى هو جلدنا بس هو اللي مترجم المعلومة؟ ولا في عضو تاني في جسمنا هو اللي هيبتدي يترجم المعلومة ويوضحها لنا؟ That's a good question. Open page 44 and choose the organ that you think is responsible for processing the information that the senses gather and let you react. Can you guess which organ my students agreed on? Exactly, it is the brain. The brain is responsible for processing the information that's received and sent to it by the senses in the form of electrical impulses. Electrical impulses هي عبارة عن إشارات كهربية اللي بتنقل كل المعلومات throughout my body. That's really interesting, isn't it? This is what we will learn more about in our next lessons. So, today we explored how senses help animals survive. We took the Egyptian moon goose as an example, as it relies on sound. It relies on the sound and sense of hearing to search for food. We investigated the dolphins' super senses. And most importantly, we practiced developing scientists' skills by asking, observing, and evaluating exactly like them. Today's lesson was so much fun. Thank you all for participating. See you next time. Bye.